Yo, what's going on, guys? And I had a subscriber say, hey, Cyro, make a video on who the Clippers could potentially replace. I don't know if the music was too loud right there, so we just put it down a little bit. But who could the Clippers potentially replace Bradley Beal, who is currently out with a fractured hip for the entire season, which means they'll get a disabled player exception for... right now, the disabled player exception that they would get would be... I'm going to have to pause the video because I didn't have that on my notes. So with that being said, because he's missing the entire year, they'll be able to apply for the disabled player exception, which will be just under $2.7 million, which is half of the current salary, $5.62 million player option for the 2026 season, with this season salary being a factor. So they get half of that, and using the disabled player exception would mean they'd still be a team that's hard capped. However, let's just talk about this team that last year they were one of the best scoring defenses while still being a so-so offensive scoring team. They were last year, I believe it was middle of the pack. They were 20th in scoring offense. This year, they're the 4th worst. So they went from being the 10th worst to the 4th worst, but they were one of the best scoring defenses. So teams weren't scoring on them. They have gotten better at three-point shooting, but the ball continues to stick. They really don't have ball movement outside of James Harden being the only guy who can really pass the ball. No offense to anybody else. And as a whole, they're not as good as a rebounding team. Outside of Zubats, I know that collectively people are grabbing boards, but it's really not that. Outside of Zubats, Kawhi, and James, it feels like nobody else has more than 4 boards on this squad. So it's kind of hard to score the basketball when you're not creating second chance opportunities, and it's hard to play defense if you can't physically impose your will against your opponent. So with Bradley Beal being gone, let's just look at this hierarchy in terms of scoring. Thankfully, Bradley Beal wasn't we thought he was going to be the team's 3rd leading scorer. Continue to be Zubats. And outside of that, it's John Collins, who we did expect to be their 4th, one of the better guys scoring on this team. But thank God they kept Bogdan, because Bogdan's going to be able to fill that role. I think Cam Christie, I don't know what's Nick Batum, maybe he gets an uptick, but I think they really like Kobe Sanders. Chris Paul's just an old man. So with all that being said, there are some restrictions on players being traded for. So any trades that would happen, it would happen after December 15th, and it probably would happen closer to the January mark. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and look at free agency as who they could go after. I don't think they would go after Ben Simmons. They already went through the Ben Simmons experience, and they would have brought back Ben Simmons if he was somebody that they were interested in, but he's not going to solve what they need, and that is someone who's going to be a connector, kind of a secondary, tertiary playmaker who can play in transition and just keep the ball moving and hit open shots. So Cameron Payne, that's actually someone, if we're going into free agency, he's still somewhat quick. He's shown that he can hit the open threes at a reliable rate in terms of being an above average 3-point shooter, at least average. He'll set up good looks, and for him being not the biggest guy in the world, he is a passing guy who'll try on defense. The fact that he got minutes on a Tom Thibodeau team says something there. I like Delano Banton if I was a team that's still young and is looking for guys, looking for a guard who's 6'9", who can play make, can score. It's just that for a team like the Clippers, they don't need that right now. Monte Morris isn't there anymore. He's now with the Pacers again. Kelly Hayes, it kind of goes back to Ben Simmons. You got a defensive guy. Yeah, he can play make. Yeah, he can rebound, play some defense, but scoring and 3-point shooting is kind of what they want. And I know that he did some things with the Nets last year and hasn't looked terrible, but I just don't think that solves what they need. And the same thing goes with Dennis Smith Jr. He was on the Mavericks. He didn't make the camp, and I just think, again, you need a 3-point shooter. DeLon Wright and Markelle Fultz, they're ways away from being on an NBA roster. And then we kind of just get older guys here where we're looking at players with similar flaws or reasons why they aren't on an NBA roster are quite apparent. That being with Malik Beasley, one of them, because of the investigation. He would be a great addition to this team and would help a lot, but he's clearly not going to be available for them. So with that being said, it'd be just, I think, dumb in their part to hope that he would become available and would be able to be a part of the solution, as he's not available as someone that would realistically be signed. I think Seth Curry, he's just likely going to re-sign with the Warriors, so that's not going to happen. Garrison Matthews is someone who's a really good guy getting deflections. He puts up threes at a high mark. I actually think he would be someone who would get some decent playing time here, and it would fit a positional need for them of someone who could get some shooting for this team, someone who will play defense and make them feel a little bit younger and wouldn't cost more than a minimum. And the same thing goes with Daquan Jeffries. I think he could provide some end of the bench help for them, and just he was a solid 3-point shooter last year on what, like two makes a game. And then when you start going deeper into here, Alec Burks and Josh Richardson, I just think they're too old. And they have injury concerns. Zaire Smith and Terrence Davis, these are just fringe NBA players. So we go over to the small forward position. Cody Martin's on the Pacers. So there's Ricky Council. He's a solid, like, utilitarian Swiss Army knife type guy. I just don't see him being the player that would change things. Same thing with KJ Martin, the son of Kenyon Martin Jr., Drake Whitehead. He's just an injury concern. You couldn't really see the floor there. Kessler Edwards would be someone that I think they should have interest in, and that he's still young, that he could be a guy who can play the combo forward position and give him some, run. I know they need more of a shooting guard position, so you can see it's really the well in terms of talent and free agency isn't the best. Now, when we look at potential trade candidates that they could go after, first, I think we do need to address, first, this is hoopshype that we use, my work, for the salaries, but for the NBA trade candidates, we're using Spot Rack. Or is it Spotrac? Someone tell me what it is. I think it's Spotrac. I've always wondered. Now, going over to the Clippers. Clippers, if you guys didn't know, are actually the 9th highest payroll in the NBA. And trade candidates, for the longest time, we thought it's going to be Bogdanovich because they have that team exception or team option, which would make him basically a expiring contract. That's what we assume. Maybe Chris Paul's in there. I know Kobe Brown seems to be some, like, maybe trade sweetener. I know he's going to be a guy who's going to be, as I hit my microphone, sorry if that made a terrible sound to anybody, but I just felt like I was hunched over and I was talking like this. I felt we got to make sure that posture is right, ladies and gentlemen. And I feel that when I look at this, if Bogdan's used in there, Kobe Brown, we're looking at maybe let's just under 19. They probably want to take at most 18, save a little bit of money. So we're going to look at guys at most of $18 million. So that would start us. I don't think they're going to be in the DeMar DeRozan, Jonathan Kuminga, Kyle Kuzma. I don't think Contavious Caldwell-Pope would solve things. I don't think getting another big would solve things. Colin Sexton and his expiring contract could be of interest because he's a guy that I think if you were to trade for him, the cap hit's 18.9. His the cash salary, tax salary, so that could be one that works. I think if you were looking in the market of getting a guard like that, maybe do a Malik Monk, but Collins is expiring and he's young. The team's small, and I don't know if that would be something that Tyronn Lue would love. So where you look at Bogdan, all right, so the number on the right is their tax salary. So we're going to just look at the tax salary as the tradable contract. So it's 18.9. And I don't see so far the guys that would be of interest really aren't jumping out unless they're going for a young, because they need to get more athletic. And I don't think, Kelly Oubre could help them, but I just think the ball sticks in his hand. Quentin Grimes would be the dream in this scenario. And I don't think you want to take a flyer on a young guy. Devin Carter, in a world where they could get themselves Devin Carter and Malik Monk, now to get that deal done, I'm just curious. Let's go to Fanspo Trade Machine. And the way that I would see something like this getting done is, and this is what I'm saying, is I don't realistically think there's going to be a robust market for the Clippers to find an easy solution here. That's my problem. And the reason I bring up the Kings is they've been floating this Malik Monk idea of a trade. So I was thinking in a world where you send Malik Monk and Devin Carter, where seemingly they wanted to move Monk, they get off of Bogdan. I guess you throw in Kobe Brown as the sweetener. I want to see if this deal does not work, and maybe after December 15th, You're not allowed to do this deal by $100,000. So the only other player that I wonder, what if they were to trade Chris Paul? Maybe they're saving him for later in the year. I just don't know what young guy you would throw in here to make this deal work. Because instead of Kobe Brown, Cam Christie's on 1.9. Tony Niederhauser technically could make the deal work. I mean, you could technically do, instead of Kobe Brown, or have Kobe Brown thrown in that deal. And they're like, oh man, who would be someone that you would then want to, or wonder if they would include in the deal, or would they just take that additional salary? I'm just curious by the fact that if you were in this case, you can take off Kobe Brown and just do a 2 swap, and I believe that deal would work then. No. So, yeah, because while they're hard cap, remove 109. Yeah, so the problem right here, going back, you would need to keep Kobe Brown in the deal to make the deal work. That's what I thought. Or because of the apron. And then this would be the deal that would have to go down if you were. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. You get Monk and Devin Carter, a young guard, to help you, who's a former first-round pick that I thought had some Derek White vibes. Malik Monk gives you some shooting and upside that Bogdan, and Dunn aren't going to give you anymore. Bogdan just isn't really the shooter that, or player that he seems like he once was. The knee injuries might be catching up to him. And Chris Dunn, compared to last year, isn't the same guy. So that's one that I think of right there. The dream, I'm going to just show you guys one. Do you try to somehow get Cam Thomas? If you can pry a Cam Thomas, this would have to happen after December 15th. So let me just take off this recently signed thing, because you got to love this advertisement. Close. Okay, so Cam Thomas, 5.9. I think this would just go back to being, maybe it's a Bogdan deal. I mean, you could really throw in Chris Dunn, but I think they would just want to dump Bogdan in this deal. And they would be able to just get done. I mean, you could see if they want to throw in like a Jalen Wilson. I would like Jalen Wilson on this team if I was the Jalen Wilson, or a Tyrese Martin. But I feel like Jalen Wilson would be the one they dump, because Tyrese Martin's actually like playing decent for them. Yeah, Tyrese Martin's just slightly a bit more. So we'll go Jalen Wilson. They'd be able to do that. Like, hey, this isn't terrible. They're saying Jalen Wilson would make them worse, but I don't think so. I think this is like another deal. Now, there would have to probably be draft compensation, but you could do it. It's possible. That's it. What are your guys' thoughts? Let me know. Ciao.